Last time we talked about, you know, entire about the teachers, and then we have another chapter about the teachers and teacher efficacy in school. And so we're gonna talk about teachers more, but this is just the first chapter in the basic. We just review about the school education, and then school education participants. So we first one we review the teachers last lecture, and then we're gonna talk about these children, about the children's nature, and we pretty much know about the children, especially you have some experience with your niece, or you have observed from newborn babies, and then if you have experience in watching their growing, and then you have a pretty much good experiences, and then if you worked as a nanny or just babysitters, a lot of teenagers do babysitting. That's pretty much their first job. So they have a babysitting experiences, and it helps your teaching career a lot. And many of you chose teaching career through your babysitting experiences, and you found your own characteristics, and you found you really love children and like children, so you want to live with the children. That's why you came to teaching profession. So pretty much from newborn babies we watch children's learning and how they move, and then their mobility, and by their mobility, and then those mobility function, motor functions developed, and then their intellectual curiosity make them just move more, and then their curiosity actually stimulates, they provoked them to move more. So it's like when they crawl and creep and then try to touch it. And so smart moms put the stuff in front of babies, colorful ones, so make baby just move more, so develop more acute motor functions. So we do those, and then like Glenn Doman and many other scholars said, motor functions and brain functions are directly connected through spinal cord. So all sensory inputs coming in, and then babies receive sensory inputs, and then their brain process those sensory inputs, of course. And then after processing, the outcomes of processing goes to long-term memory and stay there as a knowledge structure, and then it comes out through their language, social, emotional, motor functions. So we call that is a developmental domains. And then if they show any kind of a delay in social, cognitive, language, social, emotional, motor functions, and then we call that is a developmental delay. Those are cognitive developmental delay. So pretty much children from newborn babies, those motor functions in their brains are directly connected. So usually when child has diagnosis with disabilities, and then most of disability characteristics, it doesn't matter just learning disability, intellectual disability, ADHD, and emotional disability. Most of disabilities, and they have one spot about the one of characteristics is physical, you know physical motor functions. They have some motor function limitations, so it's not orthopedic disability based on their health, or just like a somehow neurodevelopmental issues. It's more like a sensitivity. It's more like a sensory based motor functions. Most children with disabilities or some serious deficiencies, they have sensory based motor functions. So sensory based motor function means they can walk and jump and run, and then all their limbs are fine and function. Only those sensitivities just low and weak. So even though they can walk well, easily they can fall and get hurt. And because of their senses, it's like a foot, bottom senses, and then those fingertips senses, so easily they dropped. And the eye spatial, feature spatial motor coordination have some weaknesses, and the eye-hand coordination. So we believe just this is all about occupational therapies matters, but it is most of teachers and speech language pathologists and occupational therapy and physical therapists, they must understand those about sensory-based motor functions. So children's that young age, those developmental period is like 0 to 5, 0 to 6, end of 6, pretty much that's Piaget projected developmental period in stage 2. Sensory motor is the first stage, as Piaget said, 0 to 2, right? That those toddler age. At that time, children pretty much finish their motor development, even though they are still, weak, not just like a skiffle, but still, in toddler age, they can walk and somehow run, even though they are not just, they cannot do, jump and skip and those kind of, more higher level motor functions. But pretty much mobility wise, and by toddler, they can go wherever they want to go, right? So skillfully they develop their motor functions and then their brain function is developed together. So these are all together connected. So children are, all those children's basic natural characteristics goes with their motor functions and then goes with their intellectual curiosities. So let's say all human beings are social creatures. We are all social creatures, right? We are social animals. That's why in the past we always just intact, with the people, people to people, person to person. We always interacted. Now it's like a corona, those COVID-19 came, and then all SNS and then those online, still we gotta talk with someone and you just continuously taking pictures and something happened to your life and then you share with your people, whoever, just your friends and family, and just you share with the people and then they just a thumbs up, thumbs down, and it make you just emotion just up and down based on you posted something, nobody responded, and then that's social part, and then you're emotionally very like, what is this, nobody care about me anymore, and those kind of feelings you feel. So younger age seek more social than I think it's the old age. The old age is just like we already have a set, friendships and families and all that. So it's not really like we may need some, quiet day, calm day like that. But young age, they don't need those. They don't want to have those calm day and calm times. Always just friends are everything for them and peers are everything for them. So when children have those issues with people, relationships, and then interactions, and then really they have a difficult times, and their social, emotional maturity and growing and development, it's all impact. It's very critical. So we just gotta understand children are social creatures, social animals. That means they always crave companionship of others, always. So when they have some issues with social skills and social emotional cognitions, and then they have those impact, and then it's very hard for them. So they cannot stand alone. Adults can stand alone. We just sometimes our life is just so busy, and then we need some downtime. It's like when I was in Korea in young age, I came to the United States at the age 32, and I didn't know why I was so mentally always tired and always booked. And then I came to the United States, and then this country is so quiet, and people just left me alone. I could have my own time, and then I realized why I always felt exhausted in Korea, because in a Korean society it's so, those dynamics is so communal. They don't leave you alone. They always just ask you to come out and go out and just get together. It's more than family time, and social time is more like outsiders, friends, and so that's a Korean culture. So each country has their own culture. So I realized those differences about the social relationship and social intakes in Korea, between Korea and the United States. So I enjoy my downtime and I enjoy my own time, and then I can control my schedule. But I just used to joke. once I'm in Korea, nobody's leaving me alone, and I'm just so busy and so exhausted, and then mentally, psychologically, I feel that. So it's the same thing here, but children's age is opposite. They cannot stand alone. They always seek out fun, right? It doesn't matter it's a right or wrong. So when they, are bored, when they are bored, they just amuse themselves. So that means they bothers and annoys and touch and hit and just that's for teachers, adults, and mom. They watch them. It's all like a behavior issues because they are not quiet. They just touchy and then they can break it and then touchy and then out of place, and so that's children. So again, somebody does not entertain them and then they amuse themselves, and then in the classroom they walk around, touch stuff. If teacher's instruction does not entertain them, that means they are not attentive in instruction and learning, and then easily they just out of place. So that's one of the children's characteristics. So when you see children constantly out of seats and then just fidget and then play with the small items and stuff, and then you gotta understand it's not if it's a small behaviors, it's not behavior issues, and then you gotta just help them to be attentive, to your instructions. So children have a strong desire to be loved, accepted by others, especially their dear adults. So their dear adults are direct relationships. So pretty much they're caregivers, right? Parents. And then in school, it's their school teachers and classroom teachers. Always, just like, it's not only children. We all say just like praise can even, make dolphins dance. So we have those kind of, saying. So no, but there is no one hates being praised. We love to be praised, but children has more desire to be praised than accepted, and then liked, those kind of, because it's a social, they are social animals, and then young children have more those. So when they are attentive by adults and then liked by adults and approved by adults, accepted by adults, and then it boosts their enthusiasm and passion and then self-confidence and competence, and then they involve more and then follow teachers, guide more. So acceptance is directly linked to their sense of belonging. So that's a social creator. So everything is you just all go all over, and then social is there, social emotion, right? Social emotion there, and then all these acceptance, and then children feel vulnerable and rely on others for their survival. So when nobody's around and parents especially not paying attention much on their children because they have their own issues, and then very felt vulnerable and then uneasy and upset and discouraged, and then they end up not trusting adults. It's not just once children learned not to trust their own parents or caregivers, and then pretty much they don't trust any other adults. So in school it is very hard to earn their trust. Once the children trust their teachers, and then they will do best, and then just very close relationships. So that's the number one readiness, teaching and learning readiness. I teach my pre-service teachers and teachers, I talk about these trusting relationships, how we're gonna build trusting relationships, and then that is a part of behavior management, classroom management, and then we're gonna talk about this later chapter. It's very very important. So it does not matter what they have, we have to earn their trust, and then we have to build social emotional trusting relationships. So that's the number one skill things. And children feel uneasy attempt to obtain if proper attention and affection is lacking. So most of teachers, when I do functional behavior assessment at this class, behavior management, and then they go out and then do data collection, and then interview teachers, and then ask, why do you believe, and John and Susie, and then show these behaviors, and why do you think, and then number one answer is craving attention. It's seeking attention. So most of the teachers believe children display behaviors to get teachers' attention, and most of data observer, data collectors, people collecting data, their interpretation is, children's behavior issues is seeking attention. So it's hard, right? Why do they all troublemakers and those children with challenging behaviors seeking attention? So it's not really like, and then if you ask those people, those adults, school adults, why do you believe they seek their attention, your attention? And then their interpretation is pretty much because, they didn't get enough attention at home, and pretty much their last one and their first one, they have all kinds of reasons, but they never find those antecedents that causes it at school. It's pretty much, it's all just home related. It could be true home related, because any children have a very strong trust in adults, and their parents are behind them, and then they're very competent and very just care about the justice and fairness, and because whenever they watch those, and then they, they get in trouble, and then they know their parents are behind them. So it's a lot of, social emotional security wide, it's all related. So children's, seek attention all the time, adult attention. It's yes, many times it's related to their home environment, but mostly because they are dependent, right? They are helpless, dependent, and they don't have power. Many teachers believe children, especially with severe behavioral issues, they believe that's their power. No, they don't have power. They are not decision makers, right? They are not problem solvers. It's based on the whatever environment adults made. They just belong there, and then they have to live there. So whatever rules and regulations and policies adults made, and they are helpless followers. We are too. In job environment, if a school has a system, and then administrators, made the stakeholders made all those rules, and we have to follow. We don't have a freedom, right? We have to just say this is the rule, and then we have to follow. So it's the children are same. They are dependent. Of course, they are dependent, and they always want to have adult attention, or there's adults, affection, right? And then when they feel that they are ignored or neglected by adults, and they feel uneasy. So, and then they feel uneasy, and then they try to show their existence. I'm here. How? It's not nice way. So whenever they're doing to adult eyes, it could be all just behavioral issues, and challenging behaviors, and disruptive behaviors, distractible behaviors. It's all that, but it's all basically children's natures, and then those if we understand those nature of children and characteristics of children, and then we understand why they are doing it. So what I'm saying is, okay, so that's the children's nature, natural characteristics. So we leave them alone, or just we accept their disruptive behavior, and then they affect others, learning. What should we do? What we are saying is here, because it's their nature, and what they are doing is not really like following rules and procedures, whatever we said. So we understand why they act like that, and means they are neglected, they are ignored, they don't have enough attention, and then they don't follow what teachers teaching, and then they don't follow classroom agenda, classroom business, and then they show those behaviors. So our job is how we can include them, how they don't feel they are left out, how they don't feel they are included, and their families, and then we'll care about them, and I'm paying attention to you. So you're part of us. Those kind of feelings. That is classroom management in a learning environment. Classroom, environment. How we can run whole classroom as a, family bond. Those kind of a feeling, because children has those family bond, and then teacher as a, school mom, school dad, and then we are children. It's all just like so many children we have. So mom and dad just one person, one teacher. We have 20 kids and 30 kids here, but we all work together. They have those kind of feelings. It's all whose responsibility. It's a teacher's responsibility. That's what I'm talking about. So it's understanding their nature doesn't mean we leave them alone. So because when they do off track work, off task, it's not leave them alone. It's not that. We gotta understand why they are doing that. Especially in a school is for academics, right? And 80% of teachers doing is academics. So they should have a competent level of academics, at least the instructional level of academics. Okay, so they should follow at least 90% of what I'm teaching. Okay, as a teacher, they follow me, and then they show much just in our boundary. They can come to our boundary. It's my boundary. And then I can manage them, and then I can lead them, and then I can guide them to intellectual, academic wonderland, so they can have fun with me. So I'm more like an academic guide, and then show them. And then you go to wonderland or just wood forest, easily you can lose your way, right? And then there are trails and pathways and all kinds of ways you can find, but children are lost there, and then they lost a teacher there. That means they are totally lost in academic learning, right? And then teacher finds them and then put them back to on track. That's a teacher's job. So all teachers embrace everybody in 30 students and 20 students they have. They embrace everyone in under their arms, right? And then they can go together, and then all these characteristics the teacher understands, and then they can interpret children's behavior. So why he displays that, why she displays that, they understand that, and then they can guide better. So that's why we are talking about this. So pretty much these are basic characteristics and nature of children. And then we gotta understand that there are some of characteristics that they show, and it's not nature. It's just general, just human characteristics. Most of children learn through sight. So social comprehension is they learn through sight, visually. So visual perception is critical, and later I'm gonna talk about those cognitive foundation, because we gotta understand how children learn about the world and whole world and sensory world, and then we can understand how they learn academics. We can make them competent in academics and doing well. So social comprehension is like by sight. They just see and they understand. That's all visual perception. And social relationships, social sense, people skills, that's all through visually. They learn through visually. So how? They do something, and then the partner, how they respond, how mom responds, how daddy responds, how my teacher responds. It's all about the social relationship, right? So it is very important, because social emotional maturity, we have a immature, we talked about the children's just lack of maturity, and then he's not mature enough, and especially kindergarten teachers and first grade teachers suffer with those children really like raised as a babies. At age 5 they come to school, and then you can see right away they had a they have a permissive parents behind, and then children just act like a baby, and then they communicate through just whining and just like nagging, and so that's their way of communication with the teachers. They attempt to communicate to the teachers with that, and then they want something, and then teacher said no, you gotta wait, and they can't stand, and they show tantrum right away. So those, social emotional maturity, it is, cognitive maturity too. So they understand this social situation. Children are very, keen about that because it's their nature. They are dependent and helpless, and they don't have power. So they are very, keen about the reading adults' expressions, adults' gestures, adults, they are very good at that, very smart. So social emotional maturity and social comprehension is pretty much how their parents raised them. Parents' child rearing beliefs and attitude really impact their social emotional maturity, especially permissive home environment have weak social emotional maturity. It impact their social emotional maturity a lot. So permissive means, we gonna talk about later is about the parents, but parents, we have so diverse levels of parents. Previously I talked about the teachers and the five different types of you know teachers, about the teaching skills and knowledges, and then passions, enthusiasm, and then empathy, and all those. But parents has a way more, diverse types of parents. So based on that, children, those 5 or 6 years, but all children's developmental age span, 0 to 18. That's how they form their personal personality and natures, and then cognition and social emotional cognition, and their maturity and smartness and independence. It's all made and grow and then settled and then shaped and habitated. So it's very, especially those, permissive parents, or just inconsistent parents, and then it's the same thing, inconsistent teachers too, and make, especially parents are inconsistent. Sometimes they're very strict, sometimes they are very, permissive, and then it make children just deal with parents with whining and just, stubborn and emotional and crying. And so because, parents said no, and then, child just whines, it's a nagging, for just like a 15 minutes and 30 minutes like that, and then eventually just parents are not, those innate nature is not strong enough, and then they just like give up, and then okay, only this time, and then they just allow, and then pretty much, that's a inconsistency comes. So that's, one of social emotional maturity just impacted by these children and developmental age children, like, I said about the Piaget, what Piaget said, it's those cognitive foundation and cognitive milestone, developmental milestones. Those developmental ages, we say in the beginning is 5 years. They stay with home nurture, and then they come to school, and then they stay in school, for how many years more? 18 years, no, 12 years more. So K-12, right? So those 12 more years. So altogether it's like 18. They stay as a dependent for 18 years. So those, 5 6 years with the parents home nurture, and then they come to school, and then they have, half the home nurture and half school nurture, right? And then they form who they are, and then, they meet the different adults. So home nature is always the same caregivers if, nothing happened to, both parents. But obviously, parents got divorced, and then they have a new stepdad, a stepmother, involves a new grandparents, parents, and then niece, and it's a very complicated step, siblings. It's more, home nurture could be, complicated, but school nurture is a meet so many different, peers, and then, different teachers. If a teacher just stays 1 year, and then they meet just like, maximum just 12 different teachers as a major, main primary teachers, and then they have extracurricular teachers, and then they have different adults, and even lunchroom lunch monitors. And so they meet so many different adults, right? So those, developmental areas. So their beginning 6 to 7 years teach them developmental milestones that are cognitive foundation for their core academic learning and preparation for adulthood. So those 18 years are critical years, right? So therefore, adults involved in children's first 4 to 5 years in home nurture, and then those rest of 12 years of school is all impact the children's those 18 years education. So we say it's like children has born nature, and then those 18 years nurtured in different places with different adults. And but there's most critical outside the home. School nurture is the first two grade teachers, kindergarten teachers and first grade teachers, because those two grade teachers, maximum is the second grade teachers. Those teachers teacher efficacy, that means their skills and sensitivity as a teacher. I'm talking about their cognitive foundation is as a teaching professional. Teaching professional, their cognitive foundations and their reading the child, the individual children, and then their empathetic eyes and minds, how they interpret the children, it impact those children's lives, rest of life. Let's say K first grade teachers teach early literacy, right? And then pretty much by second grade, most of the children learn to read, and then in second grade, pretty much they move to from very easy picture book to easy chapter books. So their reading is expanded, and then they start the chapter books with very little pictures, and or no pictures. So still book font size is big, and then the page number of words per page is very small. But without pictures, they read and then print. They read print, and then their mental representation is pretty much decide their comprehension. So read through is their previous life experiences affect a lot of those vocabulary skills, language skills, pretty much cognitive language skills. Those first kindergarten grade and first grade, and by second grade, pretty much end of second grade, they should be fluent readers. And then comprehension wise, without pictures, they could understand those print comprehension. We say it's a text comprehension, right? So they read through, they could see the mental pictures, mental movies. So and then third grade, because from the third grade, real knowledge learning started from third grade. So they gotta be ready by third grade. So I see K to first grade education pretty much decide the rest of 10 years children's school education. So we don't produce school education deficiencies during these 2 years period, and then rest of children can just build those skills solidly. Okay, so they must learn to read fluently by end of second grade. So I see first and K first grade is their learning initial literacy, reading, read to write and comprehend. So reading, writing, comprehension, right? They see, they can say, they can write. So that means they see it, they gotta understand. It's a visual perception, right? They see, and then they look at the trees outside, and then trees are turning to red and yellow and brown, and then they know, okay, seasoning is a season, so summer is going and finishing, and then finished, and then fall is coming. So they know those season changes. That's all comprehension, right? And then you look at outside, they talk, oh, trees are all changing colors. It's so beautiful, but weather is becoming cold. And they could say it, and then they can write it. So saying and writing tells its behaviors, right? And it talks about their comprehension. So those beginning 3 grades, a few grades, they must finish those reading part. So it's not only the text reading and their understanding about the surroundings and word and sensory world, and they all understand about the function of all those existing objects and environment and circumstances, and they even easily on highways, there is a traffics there, and then they just understand why do we have a traffic, the cause of traffic, so causal effect, they have those relations. So when we have a traffic, we have a two causes. They have a car accident, or they have too many cars on the road, so we can have a traffic. So that's all through their lives. They see, they experienced, because they had the traffic, so when they go somewhere, and then suddenly just cars are all cleaned, and then they just cleared, and then they can just run through faster, and that's a car accident, right? And then too many cars on the road, and then they know it's too many cars, it's jammed. So highway became suddenly just a parking lot. They know that, and then that means, why? And then, oh, this is Friday, so everybody is leaving for somewhere for fun, entertainment, leisures. They understand those, timing is a Friday. Friday means they have a weekend, 2 days weekend, and then just too many family just came out to have fun, go somewhere. And then it's a holidays. Holiday means we are moving, so too many cars. So all those life experience impact their text comprehension, right? And then they can they can process. That's a cognitive process. So they all sensory information inputs coming, and then they process and they understand. And then when they read, they could, when they read, it's like, John's family, try to go to, zoo today. So mom, made all those, and then they can imagine what kind of food mom gonna prepare, or they gonna eat in the zoo cafeteria. If they have experience and then they read it in text, and then they can make mental movies, and then they understand because they have similar experiences. So it's all connected. So this is all by just basic this beginning stage, beginning just 1 digit age, because the third grade and fourth grade is the end of their 1 digit age, right? Those 1 digit age, 1 to 9, 1 to 8, 1 to 7, those ages, they pretty much finish, not finish, but major beginning cognitive development. So their cognitive foundation is very important, and then it's not just many of the parts they develop themselves based on their mobility and intellectual curiosities, but their nurture environment affect, right? So that's why many times we say children in poverty have a lack of experiences, so it impacted their comprehension later on, impacted their academic learning, because academic learning is all about the knowledge. That means it's all about the comprehension, right? So all those comprehension is pretty much based on their previous experiences. It's a lot of prior knowledge impact their learning. So that's how it goes. I just talked about this. I will talk about this K first grade education a lot, because this impact their whole just rest of school life, how they just grow, because it's still their growing period. It's a developmental age period until age 18, and we all wish our own children, school children, grow to be very competent and confident children with a strong identity and pride, right? And then they have their own self-efficacy. So I can do it. That's competency, right? So we want our children grow like that. So that's beginning those 1 digit age education impact those rest of 10 years experiences. So and let's see children's human nature and perspectives on behavior and its purpose. We're gonna talk about this later. Last chapter, we're gonna talk about this more when we talk about individual behaviors. So number one is like a student's, children's personality traits. Because same thing happened in the same teachers, same behaviors, and teachers same attitude, but based on the children's personality and characteristics, the human trait, they respond differently, react differently. So they have active personality and passive characteristics, or active, passive, aggressive, soft, and gentle, right? And they're very responsible, irresponsible. That's, it's not personality, but it's a part of, characteristics too. Obviously, it's a human nature wide, they are responsible, irresponsible, but nurture wide, they just could be shaped more, you know, better, or just shaped down and just became worse. So comparative, and not interested, prideful, timid, and self-conscious, and just a perfectionist, careless, easygoing, and perfection. I talked about perfectionist. So very independent, dependent. So I have a list of those personalities later. You go out and see the children, and then you have those screening sheet, and you check those, children's basic characteristics. So when you do child study, that will be number one you're gonna check, because you gotta understand about individual children's basic nature and traits and characteristics, and then it does not matter their born nature or this formed by their nurture, home nurture, and that's you gotta understand. So number one, child analysis, child study. That's what you're gonna do before you talk about their behaviors. So when we talk about behavior, or you're gonna hear this one again. All human behavior is learned. That's a behaviorism talk, and I think I talked about this one many times. All human behavior is learned. So that means it's obviously we have all different theories about that, beliefs about that, philosophical opinions about it. But behavioral perspectives, we see all human behavior is learned. So that means I see more like, we say attitude, the word attitude a lot, right? Those attitude is like I see more based on the environmental nurture than nature. So based on personal experiences, they have a nice attitude and really like intimidating attitude. We can have all different types of attitude and behaviors, right? And then it be habits and all those. So all human behavior is learned means it's learning. How learning comes through drill and practice and rehearsal, right? Repeat. When we have repeated experiences and then we learned those behaviors, we practice, right? We drill, so we learned those. So that means all those behaviors are repeated. It's a habituated. So we say it's a habitual behaviors. So later, when you see you're gonna do behavior analysis, and then you're gonna rank the behaviors. So you analyze the child, each behavior they show, and then you're gonna just say this is learned behavior, or habitual behavior, or just impulsive behavior. So intentional behavior, you're gonna analyze those behaviors, because it's not every single behavior is obviously learned, but we see habitual behavior is pretty much learned behavior. That's more like a nurture based behaviors. So permissive parents have more whining children, right? So those are learned behaviors. So we interpret each behavior. We're gonna talk about each behavior a lot later on, but that's the one. So all human behavior is learned. That means the good sign is so all behavior is learned. That means most of children's behavior is pretty much habitual behavior. So that means a long period of time they repeated. That means reinforced. So those behavior became habits. And then we have all the sayings, all the habits die hard, right? In Korea, you learn the one behavior at age 3, it goes on until age 80. So that means pretty much you learn the one behavior at age 3, that 3 years old baby, its behavior, stays until 80. That means till your last minute of your life. So that much human behavior is very important. But good sign is it's not like born with it. It's learned. So learned behavior means we can say it's still correctable, shapeable, removable, replaceable, changeable. That's why we have a functional behavior assessment. We have a behavior intervention plan. So we try to teach behavior. We try to reshape those behavior. Only the problem is like the behavior, newly formed behavior could be easily shapeable and changeable, right? But like old behavior, old habits, it does not die easily. So that means it does not shape easily. It does not replace easily. So we have to work on that consistently. We have to shape their behavior. So I rather use behavior shaping than replacing behavior or just behavior intervention. And I don't like those terms. I really like to use shape because most of our behaviors are habits, habitual. So let's say just like a two have one behavior to be habit, it takes about let's say 3 years. That means to be shaped we may need to spend that much years. But if we have an effective method with strategies we have, and then it could reduce because when the behavior habitualized, the baby was young, but now we are babies are a little bit older, so baby can think and they have their own egos and wills, right? So they before those behavior just naturally shaped, but now child just and teacher together, and we are on the same page, and then let's do it and let's just do together, and then child accept and then they want to change it. Let's say just like some weight training, and then just what is that, gym training. It's the same thing, right? So you just lift to some heavy, what is that, those gym instrument. It's very heavy and it's painful, but you do it because you have a will, you want to do it, right? So we could invite our child on the same page with us, and then we work together. So it's before formed that behavior, it took about 3 years, and then to shape those behavior it took just about a year or just a half a year, and something like that we can reduce. So that's the one. And then all we gotta understand all behavior is learned, but we have to understand the behavior is a form of communication. I talked about this one before. Especially those children without having verbal skills. So verbal communication, it doesn't matter. Usually children are very young age. They before they're forming their verbal skills, like up to toddler's age, and then pretty much when they feel hungry and then they cry or they scream and yell because they don't know how to express their feeling. When we got sick, we don't. It's very when we went to the doctor and then doctor asked us, so any issues, and then we explain. It's very hard to exactly explain what our pain, our issues, right? So it's a language. We have amazing language and vocabularies, but it's very hard to, even adults, it's very hard to express. If we can communicate and we can express, we have a great expressive language, and then we can express all our emotions well, and then there is no husband wife conflict, right? No friends conflict, no human conflict, because we can form our emotions, our feelings, and then why I got hurt. Sometimes I got hurt, I don't want to say it because it hurts my pride, right? So we have those kind of things. Children's the same. Even adults cannot express their feelings and their pains and their situations honestly. And then children, it's very hard for them to just form all those. So they more likely just show through their behavior expressions. So emotional expressions and behavior expressions. That's why we as an adult, when we see children's behaviors, it's part of their communication. That's why we are doing functional behavior assessment, because the function means the behavior's function. Okay, so we have a glasses. So glass function is to read, to see well, right? And pencil's function is to write. So their behaviors, what kind of a function they have when they scream, when they are out of seat, what's the function, what's the purpose and goal of what they are doing? Of course, you ask baby, why are you out of your seat? They can't explain. They just got out of it without thinking much, right? So as an adult, you watch them and observe them, and you try to find those functions, because the function meet and then baby's behavior may stop, or we can replace those behaviors more appropriate behavior. So that's what our behavior, functional behavior assessment. So we gotta understand that this, remember the communication, the behavior is a part of communication and form of communication. Okay, so under that we say all human behavior has a purpose, and is learned through repeated experiences of how their behaviors are responded by others. That's how children learn behaviors through sight. So that means it's not through sight, it's like how adults responded to their behavior. That's how they learn. That's why permissive parents make more whining child, because they are very likely to be inconsistent. So sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no, and then they make a child gamble about it. So who knows? Mom, just let's ask mom, and then mom says no, and then we whine and bug mom and the bother mom and the annoying mom, and the mom is so like oh, okay, just one time, that kind of response. That's make the children just like a whining child, crying child, fussy child, always, that's one of things. So anyway, basic, three principles of children and their behaviors and the child's nature are social, behavioral, and adventurous. That's the first child characteristics. And then because of those social characteristics, and then they always seek companionship, and then belonging, and then very playful, and then they love to have attention, adult attention and affection, right? And then they bother, annoy other adults or other people when they get bored. So they always need some social stimulation, and they just movers. They move around, and then they like to have a short attention span. I mean, obviously they are young, and then whole understanding of a whole world is egocentric. They just because they are young, right? Even adults, we have those kind of people, egocentric people. So it's like a very, we say just selfish, right? Easily we say selfish, but intentionally you do, and then you are the just center of the universe. But those young children, that's just their nature. They believe just they are center of the universe, the center of the everything, and they are most important. They interpret the whole world based on their center. So, and then most of the children, every child has intellectual curiosities, but we stimulate those intellectual curiosity through motor skills. I talked about that. So move, talk, touch, explore, and children's, all those are through their intellectual curiosity. So newborn babies just put everything in their mouth, and those skins, they cannot figure out. But mouth, taste is first, and it's all about the curiosity. And then all human behavior is learned. I just talked about that. So learned means they have a purpose of the behavior, and then learn through how their behaviors are responded by others. Like mom, I just nag and nag and nag, and then mom said okay. I nagged to teacher. Teacher says okay. I cried and cried and cried, and then I cried whenever I just don't want to work. I walk around, or I cried. I just fussy and fuss and all that, and then teacher take me outside, and then teacher remove my work. So all based on the teacher's child learns so quickly how to behave based on that. Okay, and then learned behavior, habitual behavior, right? So learned habitual and the behavior once became habit, and then we have a saying, all the habits die hard. And then all those learned behavior means that principle means, and those behaviors are correctable, shapeable, removable, changeable, replaceable. So we have a hope. We have a hope we can change it. So that's education, we can provide education. And then behavior is a form of communication. That's the third principle. And then not problematic behaviors about communication. So when we say the behavior is a form of communication, and then we always watch the child behaviors as not only problem behaviors that got annoyed. We gotta see what the child the issue is. Child cannot form through verbal communication, and then we always find like little children, even 5 years old, they may cry when they feel thirsty. Not only just children with disabilities and then have limited language skills, it's not young children. And then even adults, when they got get hungry, my husband used to say, you always very just easily pissed when you are hungry, so you never been hungry. And then he just make sure everywhere go and then fill my stomach first. So that is it's my nature and my characteristics. I hate the feeling of being hungry. I don't know, it's from young age it's formed. So it's the same thing in little children when they feel hungry, and then they are fussy and just angry and scream and cry and those. And then general difficulties organizing and expressing their mind and needs. As I said, it's not only children, it's human beings. Not every human beings honestly express their feelings. And we reserve a lot of just words not to hurt other people. It doesn't mean we forgive them and then we accept them. Pretty much we pile those inside of us, and one day just when once something pissed off, and then we just explore those bomb to our most closest ones, you know and then we love the most, and then we hurt their feelings. So that's all human conflict, because we are all social animals. And then the function, so all behaviors has the function. So all human behaviors are predictable. We can predictable, right? We know those routines, and then child habitual behaviors, and we know the routine, and we understand. So all human behaviors are predictable. That's why we could teach. So all human behaviors are learned behaviors. So that means we can teach those behaviors. We can adapt those behaviors. Adaptable those behaviors affected directly by environmental events. So we understand those basic characteristics and principles, and then it's much easier for us to deal with the children's behavior issues. So that's what we are talking about. And then let's just simply talk about the home nurture environment, because of my just talking getting just over an hour. And home nurture environment, I already talked a lot about the those home environment. But remember, social emotional foundation, home is for social emotional foundation for children, right? And then smart parents, wise parents teach children self-discipline and self-management. That's a responsibility. We really appreciate those parents. Children, we have more children with self-discipline and responsibility, and then our job in school is very easy and much better, and then we can enjoy our jobs so much. So it's great. But problem is, not every parents have that interest, even though some parents want to do it, but they don't know how to do it. So we have all different kinds of parents. So we talked about the human characteristics, especially by nurture. Home nurtures a child just learned, especially learned helplessness. Even believe it or not, I have my college students even have learned helplessness. And then many times I just tell them inside me, just trust yourself, trust your comprehension. Because we have once a while, I have students make sure everything. And then they're asking is that they understood correctly, but they do not trust. They always try to make sure from me and say yes, and then they can, trust their understanding. So that's a learned helplessness, helpless, child. It's really annoying their teachers a lot, because it's not just one question, every single thing. So they try to make sure, ask questions. So it's a lot of, energy they take from the teacher, and then organize materials well. So it's all just taught by home. If they learn those skills at home, and then teachers have a great time with those, and they can enjoy teaching them. And then good time management. So they just finish all work on time and set schedules and try to must follow those schedules. So it's great characteristics, right? We wish the parents teach those skills and plan for and mindful of future events, so they know what's coming, and based on that they prepare and control and regulate the emotion and stress well, and then organize plans and actions to achieve a goal, and then inhibition, control, impulses and seductions, and they can control. It's amazing. It's a perfect child, right? Perfect children we have. So we wish we have these children, and then we wish we become like this, characteristics. And student background, checklist. So because of this, home environment, we have to make sure if children has enough sleep, no sleep issues, health issues, no physical pain or moral limitations, inadequate or missing breakfast. It really make them just fussy at school, and then challenging home atmosphere. We make sure this is a background checklist, and then too many transitions or school transfers. So some children have just like constantly every 2, 3, 4 months, because of their housing issues, electricity, power issues. I had those students a lot, and then unable, unstable emotional state, and then family issues and living situations, and then meditation issues, and mediation issues. And failure or rejection experiences, fearful social trauma, negative experience with the teachers, auditory sensitivity and distraction, and medication, and other drug issues. So these are the all general home nurture issues we may have, when their home nurture is not stable. Okay, so beginning 5 years, the children are coming from those parents or caregivers, and then parents are real children for 5 years. Of course, and up to 18 years, still home nurture affect the children's development, right? But we have parents with permissible parents. Parenting skill, parenting style is permissive, authoritative, and then democratic. But we have a way more different types of parents, and then those parents believe so, and children receive education and explore their own education in the world. So all different types of parents have different types of children, and some parents allow children to follow their strong intellectual curiosities, but some parents really limit. Some parents never provided those. So it's all about the parents' beliefs and child rearing attitude and beliefs, and all that. So some parents may not have any beliefs, any goals, and they just have children and just feed them and raise them, and that's it. No educational goals. Some parents are very child oriented and may become permissive toward the child rearing practices, and some parents, they do not want to see or cannot stand to watch their child unhappy, whining, crying, and become very permissive. And some parents believe their child's happiness is the only matter in the whole world. So they don't try to teach it, because teaching means learning, right? Sometimes learning, it's not always fun and pleasant and happy. Sometimes the learning, you have to sit down for a while, you have to be attentive, and it's not always pleasant. So parents don't want any structured education to their children. Just let them feel just free, and just whatever they want, they give. And then I had even experience with one child, came at age 5 to my classroom, and then I heard from his grandmother saying, her mom gave him candies every morning as a breakfast. and then the child had, that what is that, formula bottles until age 5. So just raised as a baby, came to me, and then he did not say any one word. And there is no, he pretended just like no fingers. He had fingers, but no finger skills, motor functions, because he never used much. And then first time just hold the pencil and crayons, so it was very hard for him to just hold and practice it. So very for 5 years, the child just raised like so helpless, like a newborn baby's kind of care. It's not even care, right? Just which mom will give their child just candies for breakfast? So mom herself has a lot of psychological emotional issues. So that's why the grandmother had guardianships for the baby, for the boy, but mom still stayed with her son. So we have all different kinds of parents. I just listed. I couldn't list endlessly. What I'm trying to say is just like we gotta understand these parents and nurtures, and we understand what kind of children we gonna have. So we understand that we have a way more diverse types of parents, work with the parents, and then we have a very just like a young age moms, right? And their child still, because age up to age 18, let's say just 16 years old girl had a baby, and then the 16 years old girl herself is a baby, still child, and then child got another child. So it's very hard to expect those child, and then all kinds of personal human issues we have. So we have a separate section for the poverty. And then later we're going to talk about these precursory factors, what kind of a home environment children have. So we're going to talk about this more later on. So anyway, these days, all the time, farm work, society was like pretty much most of people are just working on the farms, more labor jobs, and then at the time there's a child rearing attitude, and then these days parents with a much less number of children they have, and then more parents are lenient, and not many parents really think they educate, because education itself is like teaching and learning, right? So most of our parents believe they are just nursing the children and not educating children, especially when they have children with disabilities, and those parents suddenly feel that they are very helpless. They don't know what to do, and then not many parents are really just interested in teaching age appropriate skills, even self-help skills, independent skills. So all those issues they just come to school, and then so diverse, so matured, very independent child, and then so like a baby types of child. So you have a spectrum of children based on their parents' child rearing styles. So you're gonna have those. Some parents are very demanding and intimidating, and then some parents are very just lenient, let them do whatever they wanna do. There is no set rules in a home. So we have all those. So it's so opposite world that looks like a living. So we have those children. So pretty much, let me see, based on home nurture education, whether children become independent, self-disciplined, responsible, and autonomous person or not, right? So it's like a self-discipline. I talked about this a lot. Self-disciplined, responsible, and responsibility, independency, and it's all same. And then self-control, self-regulation. It connected to delay gratification, inhibition control, and so it's all related to their things, and yeah, so modern society is like a very child rearing attitude, and beliefs are very, diverse. The only the just characteristics, more more parents raise their children, let's say just a responsibility and independence, those two characteristics, self-disciplined and then responsibility and independence. Independence and responsibility are pretty much like a self-discipline and self-management. We have a less number of students with a strong responsibility and independence than these modern society children. So that means at home, it's not just parents really teach, all the time. When I was young, and I'm 1960s born, so 1970s and 80s, pretty much like 1960s and then beginning of 1980s, that was my K-12 education, not even, kindergarten, first, to 12th grade education. We naturally at home, we have many siblings. Pretty much in my time it's like 4 to 6 children are common, and then previously, yes, like here it's the same. Many countries they have around 10 kids parents have. So even though parents did not intentionally teach, they learn this responsibility, independence through their sibling relationships, family relationships, right? So older children take care of younger children. Pretty much older children raise the younger children, and parents are responsible for food, and rest of all those education comes between siblings. But these days, one or two children, it's very hard, right? And then pretty much, especially the families that has a less number of children, and those parents are more protective, right? More protective, and then it's so kids are precious, and it's they have a less interest in teaching responsibility and independence. So parents do everything for them, and then when they have social emotional conflict, and then parents just move them just around to private schools, or just schools less more lenient schools than structured schools. And it's instead of teaching children to be adapted to the environment, and parents change the environment for their children. So that's what Jordan Peterson said. It's the emperor of the universe. The parents raised them. So it's like it's more egocentric, and then it's a whole universe stays for me, that kind of. So in the past, we teach children to be adjusted to the environment. You follow the teacher's rules, you follow teachers, and then, but here it's opposite now. This modern society with a less number of children, and then that means teachers in school, teachers have more difficulties to teach more discipline issues, more behavioral issues, more emotional issues, especially those young teachers in early 20s, and they got just graduated, became teachers, is have a very difficult time, because those parents are older than them, and then they're all assistant teachers, school personnel. It's very it's difficult. I'm not saying just a teaching job is easy. That's why we have a lot of teachers quitting their jobs, and then just 44% of teachers quit their jobs within 5 years. Teacher attrition is a very big issues, and I just talked about this probably before. So it's very hard. It's like all up to the child luck of what kind of parents they meet, what kind of teachers they meet. It's all up to their beginning life. For 18 years, their parents and teachers they meet pretty much decide what kind of a person they will be, adult will be. So this is pretty much all that I just talked about. This changing environment. It's like these days we have so many alternative day schools, because children cannot be adjusted to adapted to accommodated to just regular public schools. So we have many other private schools, homeschoolings, and we have all kinds of different way of adjusting. To me, I see that it's like instead of we train children and raising children and teaching children to be adjusted to the environment, and then adults try to provide better environment, so their children just stay the same, and the environment just take them. So that kind of opposite way of teaching. So anyway, I'm gonna stop talking here, because I have way more about those parenting, and just And then I just have sayings about the early intervention educations, not intervention, only just educations for the children with weak cognitive foundation or that. But I believe I will have a chance to talk about those later. So pretty much just I'm gonna finish my talking about this first chapter about whole this public schools and then school education, and then it's a participant as a teacher and children and parents. I have just briefly, but still it's a lot of talking, sorry. And I really hope you guys just listen and digest and understand, and just let me know if you have any questions. Okay.